Welcome, everybody. So this is PCG Scholar. This is our application that is used to manage the Lindsey Nicole Henry Scholarship. This is the application parents will log into to create their applications for the scholarship. The process is they create the application. The L&H team, Stacy and Crystal, will walk through each of those apps and approve them or not, and then the parents will accept the scholarship. And then you're also, as the private schools, you're able to see those scholarship applications and you see some of the information from them. And I'll walk through exactly what all that is. And then you'll also be able to submit your annual statements for the students that are attending your school who are on the scholarship, as well as your quarterly invoices. So I'll walk through all of that with you guys today. So I have logged into the system. The address, the URL is pcgscholar.com/LNH. I'll just go back to the login page so you can see it up here. Type in LNH. And then you will put in your email, password, and log in. I will tell you, if you're new to this system, do not create your own account. If you create your own account, you'll have a parent account. Now it is possible for you to create your own account and then have Stacy make you into a school account. But if you don't have access to the system, contact Stacy and she'll be able to get you in. But we just put in our email, password, log in. And the very first thing we see is a list of all the applications. So, and this is an application that's been submitted either for the current school year or school years prior, where your school's name was listed as the private school on that application. Okay, so you'll see here I have a bunch of applications, basic information. This is the student name. Okay, this is the mom and dad name. This is student name. I have the parent name over here. I have the date of birth, grade, school year, the very first year they got the scholarship, if it's an initial or renewal. So, have they been getting the scholarship and they're renewing, or is this a first timer? The day it was submitted, how much the award was. So how much the scholarship is for the entire year. Okay. And then the status of this application. So if it's been accepted, that means the parents accepted the scholarship. They will be seeking reimbursement. If it's pending acceptance, like this one, it means that a scholarship's been offered but hasn't been accepted or declined. If it's been returned to the parent, right, that means that the application isn't approved. The parent needs to do something. They need to be engaged in this process and either submit more than likely an acceptance letter, or they need to answer some questions that Stacy or Crystal have. And if it's an initial review or final review, that means that it's been submitted by the parent, but it hasn't been processed yet. So it's still being looked at. Now, some things I can do on this page here. So I can filter this by school year. So right off the bat, I might want to just see what the current list of applications are, rather than seeing all the prior years too. I could say just show me the new ones, right? Because those might be the parents that have more questions. I could see show it to me by grade of the student. And I could also see show me anything that's maybe been returned to parent. Right, I might want to keep an eye on this one, or maybe I reach out to the parents to ask them if they need any assistance. But I can kind of filter this list, and I can also just search for a student name, right? So it says search on last or first name. So I could search for a particular student as well. So if I was just looking for Newton, just type in Newton, hit enter, and there we go, Terrence Newton. Now, if I click on the student's first name or click on their last name, I'll see the application. I'm going to see the status that it's an initial. Bridget Newton is the parent who submitted it. And then I'll see some information from it. And I'll also see the private school acceptance letter here. So if this, one of the statuses that an application can be in is private school review. And that means that Stacy needs you guys, more than likely, to attach an acceptance letter. So sometimes the parents lose those, and and you guys will probably likely have it, right? And so you can pull that and attach it on behalf of the parent. And that way we can keep this application moving and we're not stuck waiting on a parent to find something or waiting on the parent to reach out to you so you can send it to them so they can come in here and attach it. If an application does get placed into a private school review status or school review status, there will be instructions at the top of this application in a notification banner right here where my cursor is, walking you through what to do. But basically what you're just going to do is you're going to attach a file here. So I'll click here to attach a file. I'm just going to grab any old file. Has to be PDF, a doc, so a Word document. It can be a picture as well. And then once I've attached this, you're just going to go in here, click edit status, and send it back to initial review. There will be instructions for you on how to do that. The other thing I want to show you here is you can view the history of this application. So what you're going to see here is everything that's been done. So Bridget started it. She attached an IEP. She signed these forms. She submitted it to initial review. And you'll see Crystal made some changes here to the application data, mostly just adding internal to the process information, not really anything the parent needs or is added. And then you'll see she updated to return to parent. And this is what was done. This is why it's been returned to the parent. So this is good for you guys to go in and take a look at if something's been returned to parent and you want to help get this application through. You can come in here, view the history, and see why it was returned to parent, because you might want to just jump in and say, oh, I'm going to go ahead and attach that, and then I can email Crystal and tell her it's there, and the application can move forward. So if I'm done looking at this and I want to go back to my application list, I can click back to all up here, or I can just go over here in the navigation bar and click on students, and it'll take me right back to that list. If I had more than 25 students on this page, I don't know how many applications you might have viewing, but you can always click these little arrows to move pages. Or I can also decide to say, hey, show me 50 at a time or 100 at a time or just 10 at a time. And that will show more or less applications. If I want to have a little less scrolling as well, I can go up here and I can say compress. And you'll see it shrinks the space in between the rows. So I don't have to scroll as much if I'm wanting to look at this data. The next thing I'm going to show you guys is school info. So this is the information, basic information about my school. So you should see your school's name, the email address, website, phone number, address should all be in here. Private school affidavit, which you need to attach every year. You can do that in this page. Stacy does want me to remind you that you still need to also email it to her. And then you'll see the contact information specific. And this is basically for who's the main person at my school that Stacy or Crystal or a parent would reach out to if they had questions specifically around the LNH and the scholarship. I'm going to come back up to the top of the page and I'm going to point this term field out. This is really important. So this controls the quarter and tuition and fees data that I see in this page. So you can set this up. You have to set this information up for every school year, right? So this is, I'm looking at 23-24, so last school year. If I want to look at this upcoming school year, I need to make sure I go to 24-25, and I'll have different dates in here, extending from 2024 to 2025. This information needs to be filled in. You need to define your quarter start and end date and the number of school days in that quarter for each quarter. This is what's going to drive your invoicing, and it's going to determine whether you can invoice for a student in a quarter based on when the student started attending your school or when their scholarship application was approved. Or if the student left your school, if they left in the middle of the year, you're not going to be able to invoice for quarters after the date they left. And the way the system determines that is based on the start and end dates of each quarter. So this is required information. If you ever log in and you go look at your invoices to do an invoice and you're like, I don't have any invoices here, it's just a blank page, that likely means something's up with your quarter dates. Either you haven't entered them or you've entered them incorrectly. Now the next section is tuition and fees. So tuition and fees is where you can define for each grade level how much the tuition is for them and what the fee amount is for that grade level. Now you can set this up for different groupings. So I'm going to delete this group real quick and I'll kind of show you how to set all this up. Delete this one too. We'll start over. So I'm going to add a new grade level group. And I'm going to select the grades that this applies to. So I'm going to do my pre-K and kindergarten. We'll just pretend that they're all the same tuition and fees. And then I'm going to type in what their tuition is. So let's say it's $5,500. And I can do 24 cents if I want to put cents in there, I need to. And then if I click anywhere else outside of that field, it's going to automatically save for me. So if you see the page kind of bouncing around a little bit like that, it's because it's saving. So it saves as I go. And I click add a new fee to add a fee. And then I'm going to type the name of that fee. Say this is $150. And I can click to add another one. And we'll say have a registration fee. $50. And so now I've defined for these grades what the tuition and fees are. And the reason you do this is so that you can auto-populate this information into the annual statements. So rather than filling this information out for every single student every year for the annual statements, you can fill it out one time. And then based on the student's grade level, it'll populate the annual statement with just a click of a button. And I will show what that's like in a minute. So I'm going to add another group here. I'm going to do the rest of my elementary school or grades. And you'll notice here I can't select any of these because I already have a group. So a grade can only be in one group at a time. It's going to be $5,900, and we're just going to have a registration fee of $200. And we'll add in the activity fee for $100. Okay. So now I have two different grade level groups, and I'll do my last one just to speed this up. I'm going to do all the rest of my grades. Now, if you come in here and you decide I need to move, I accidentally selected a grade here that I want in this group, all you need to do is deselect it from this group first, and then it'll let you add it to this group. Now I have fifth grade down here. If I want to get rid of one of these fees, first of all, I can edit this fee. I can edit the name, I can edit the amount, but if I want to delete it entirely, like let's say this health fee, I just click the little trash can icon right next to it, and that'll delete it. I'm going to stop here and see if there's any questions. All right, excellent. So we will move on to annual statements. So to do my annual statements, I'm going to go to Finances. And then I'm going to click the Annual Statements tab. And I'm going to see all of my students for the 24-25 school year. This field is here as well, just like on the school info page. If I wanted to look at a prior year, I could do that. So I'm going to see my student grade application, and then this total amount tuition and fees, this is coming from the annual statement. Actually, I need to do something real quick. If you guys will hang on, be a little patient with me. Let me get a application in there that I can edit. All right, there we go. Okay, so I'll show you this process of annual statements. We'll look at Jasmine Bonilla, who's in 6th grade. It's a renewal application. You'll see there's no numbers here because I haven't done anything with it. The start of the, or I should say the status for her annual statement's not started. Submitted means that I have submitted the annual statement. Approved means Stacy's looked at it and has approved it. So I'm going to create the annual statement. Just clicking create over here next to the status. Okay, and you'll see she's going into 6th grade. If you look at this statement and you see 6th grade here and this is incorrect, you're going to need to contact Stacy or Crystal and ask them to fix it. They're able to update that, but you won't be able to update it. But this will impact the tuition and fees functionality and other things, so you want to make sure that's accurate. I'm going to put in the first day of attendance. Now, the first day of attendance is for the current school year, right? So 24-25. When did that student start attending my school? So I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to put July 31st. You'll see I need to add the tuition and fees for this student. I'm going to hit auto populate fees, and that's going to pull in the fees and tuition that I added in that school info page for 6th graders, right? So rather than having to add all this for every single student one at a time, I can auto populate it based on my grade level groups that I created over my school info page to save me a good bit of time. Now I can always customize this. So if Jasmine here is going to have an additional fee that most students may not have, such as speech therapy, I can add that to the to Jasmine's annual statement. I can also add a discount. So let's say I'm going to not charge her an activity, or sorry, a registration fee. I can take that $50 off here, and this total amount is going to be right here. Let's save all these changes. And so when I've finished creating the annual statement, I'm just going to click the submit statement button. And you'll see my status is now submitted. I cannot make any edits to this anymore. And I'm going to go back to my annual statements, and I would move on to the next one. You'll see this is all filled in for me now. I see my total, I see my tuition, fees, that $50 discount I gave her. It's all going to show up right here too. Do we have any questions about annual statements? Or Stacy, if there's anything you want to add?
Like there is a question in the chat. She says, is there a way to create our own grade levels? I guess maybe they have special programs. No. Okay.
Yeah, no, those are all tied to standard grade levels. That's tied to the scholarship. So each grade level, the state defines grade levels, and those grade levels have a weight, and that weighting gets gets factored into the scholarship amount, and it's all tied together, so we can't have like customized grade levels.
So Christina, I would suggest if you have, let's say, you in your question, you say first special ed. So if you have a special ed program at your school and it costs $1,000 for a first grader to participate in that specials program, then just add that on your annual statement and list it as whatever your special program is called. I know every school has a different name, so just write that out in there and then write out what that amount is. And that'll it'll all total. And then what I do is I compare what your total is to the scholarship award total, and whichever is the lower amount between those two, I divide it by 4. And then that's what your quarterly check amount is. Yeah. Also, Blake was talking about me approving it. So if you guys put something in here that's not an allowable LNH fee, then I'll just contact you and just get a little more clarification that I understand what you're putting on here. I know some things that I occasionally see on here that are not covered. Before and after school care is not covered under LNH. And let's say you have a student that has a hearing disability. LNH does not pay for any supplies. Like if that student needed a microphone in the classroom or some type of special speaker system, LNH does not cover those type of things. But it will cover, like if you needed maybe a special curriculum for that particular kid, it will cover that. Or if there was tutoring needed for a child, or, like Blake had said, speech therapy, OT therapy. If you contract with somebody that provides a service that child needs, and the tuition has already been paid for and they have extra money, then you can use those fees to apply towards the therapy. But if you ever have any questions as far as what's covered and not covered, shoot me an email or give me a call. I'm happy to discuss your specifics to that child.
Yeah, just to highlight like where you would put that in, under the tuition and fees section, you can add additional fees just like I did for speech therapy services, or in the case of a specialized, special ed grade level where there'd be additional, the tuition amount would be something higher, you can add that in. You can also just edit these fields, right? So if the tuition amount is higher for a specific grade level, even though you can't necessarily define that in the school info page, you can just change those amounts in here or add additional dollars in a additional fee line. All righty, moving on to invoices. So just like my school info page, just like my annual statement page, my invoices page has the school year up here at the top. So you just want to make sure you got the right year. Just like my applications page, I have some filters. So I could look for a particular quarter. So I could say, let's look at quarter 1 invoices. I can also look at my statuses. So what haven't I even started? What haven't I not started or created? So these are the ones I know I need to submit. I can see those here. If I want to clear all these out, I can scroll to see my first list. I can compress this so I got less scrolling to do. Every student that has an application that's attending your school will get one row per quarter for each invoice. Okay. So you see Dane Adams here has quarter 1, quarter 2, 3, and 4. So 4 quarters. So I have 4 invoice records for Dane here. Joe Zimmerman, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. They're a little bit spread out. So each student will have up to, well, actually, they can have more than 4 or less than 4, depending on when they enter the program or when they leave. Actually, sorry, I take that back. Each student has a maximum of 4. Some may have less, right? So some students may have less than 4 quarters of invoices. So if they didn't start attending your school or they didn't apply for the scholarship until after the first quarter ended, right, you would just have 2, 3, and 4 here listed. Likewise, if they left your school before the 4th quarter started, right, you would just have quarters 1, 2, and 3 listed here. Over on the left, the very first column is my invoice number. This gets automatically assigned to the invoice when you create it. So the very first step here, and I'll use Dane Adams' 3rd quarter invoice as an example. It's in a not started status, so I'm going to click on create to create that invoice. It's going to load my invoice data up. I got a created status, and you'll see here I now have an invoice number. I have the basic information from the student, so the student's name, their date of birth. I'm going to see the date the application was approved, right? So this is important to know because you can't invoice for days that the student didn't have an approved application. So if your quarter started in August and it ended in September, and this application, oh, sorry, that's a bad example. Let's say it started in August and it didn't end until October, right? But the student didn't start attending or didn't have an approved application until the middle of September. You're not going to be able to invoice for the full quarter. So you'll need to look at that date, especially on those first dates or on those first quarters and last quarters, just to make sure you have the right number of days the student was present. Excuse me. You're going to see the reporting period and these quarter start, quarter 2 dates, quarter date from, quarter date to. This comes from your school info page, right? So when you put those quarter dates in, they populate to the invoice. So it tells you when the quarter started and ended. And if the student left, right? So if they left your school, they transferred to another school, or they went back to public school, they'll have a withdrawal date in here, and you'll know you can't invoice for after that date. So to complete this, I'm going to have 2 fields that are already populated for me. The private or the quarterly private school tuition and fees. So this is that private or that annual statement amount divided by 4. And then I'm going to see my quarterly L&H award amount. So this is how much scholarship they were awarded divided by 4. And then I'm going to have the fields I got to complete, which is the quarterly check amount. How much am I invoicing for? So I cannot invoice for more than the smaller of these 2 numbers. So in this case, the scholarship award's the smaller number. So that's what I'm going to have to invoice for. So 1636.21. I can put some notes in here. So if I have some questions for Stacy or I feel like I want to give her some more information, I can do that and she'll see it. The number of days in the quarter, 45 school days. So I'm going to say the student attended all 45. So they didn't miss any days. And then the last thing I'm going to do here is attach the attendance record. There's my attendance record. I can save all this. And then once this is all entered and I'm confident it's accurate, I'm going to submit the invoice. The invoice now becomes submitted status up here. See submitted. I also have a select actions button where I can print this invoice. So I can get a PDF version of it. All right. So I just download it to my computer. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So I can actually save this to a hard drive or my computer, my laptop. I can print it, send it to the printer, put it on paper, or put it in a file somewhere. So I will have a paper copy available to me if I need it. All right, I'm going to hang out here for a second and see if there are any questions. All right. So I am going to do something on the other side of the wall as a scholarship administrator here, just so I can show how it works in the system. So I'm going to return an invoice. Okay. So I'm going to leave and come back, kind of refresh the page. All right. So you'll see this Dane Adams Q3 invoice here. It's been returned. So let's talk about these statuses. The first status is not started. So I haven't done anything yet, haven't created the invoice. Created means I've created the invoice, but I haven't submitted it yet. So you'll see here I have Joe Zimmerman, first grade, Q2. I actually don't have any information in here yet. So I need to, complete that and then submit it. A submitted invoice, right? So I've submitted it to Stacy. I'm waiting on her to take a look and approve it. I have an approved invoice, okay? But it hasn't been, the check has not been mailed to me yet. If this status was mailed, then that means the check is on its way. I also have a status called not eligible. So this means that I cannot do anything with this invoice. I'm not going to get paid on it for whatever reason. This is not eligible to be reimbursed. And then I have returned. So returned means the invoice was evaluated by Stacy and found lacking in some way. So I need to do something. So I'm going to click on view next to the returned. And I'm going to see the return reason listed up top here. So it says, please update the attendance record. It is missing days. Okay, I must have submitted an incomplete attendance report. So in order to fix that, I'm just going to scroll down here. I'm going to delete this attendance document. And I'm going to attach the right one. And then I'm going to submit it again. And I want to point something out here. The invoice number is actually updated. So when an invoice gets returned and you submit it, it gets an R1 attached to it right here. That means this is the first revision, revision 1. Okay, so it's a brand new invoice number. If it got returned and submitted a second time, this would say R2, so on and so forth. So if you're ever looking and wondering why we have these little R's there, that means the invoice was returned and it had to be revised and submitted again. All right. Any questions about invoices?
Blake, before we go off of this page, I want to add something. As you are submitting your invoices, you might check back maybe once a week or every couple of days just to make sure that it goes from submitted to approved. I try to always remember to email you if I've had to return an invoice, but sometimes if I'm doing a lot of them, I might, and you only had one that had to be returned, I might accidentally miss it. So I would just check back often to make sure your submitted goes to approved. And then I had one other thing to say. Oh, on the invoices, one of the main reasons I have to return an invoice is if your attendance record that you submit to me does not match your quarterly dates. A great example of this would be, let's say at the end of the school year and you adjusted your quarter dates because you didn't have to use snow days, allowed snow days. So maybe you're going to let school out 3 days early. So you set your attendance or your quarterly dates back in August, and here it is May, and you've adjusted your roster by 3 days. If you will put something in the note section that says, unused snow days, so we're letting school out 3 days early, that way I understand why your attendance is not matching what you report on this invoice. Otherwise, sometimes when I look at that and I see that it's 3 days short, specifically if it's just one student, I think that that student has withdrawn from your school and nobody notified me. And so I won't pay that invoice immediately because I think there's something wrong with it. And so I'm going to either most likely send it back to you to ask why, the attendance doesn't match. So if you put something in the notes section, it keeps me from having to return it to you, and it just makes the process move faster. Otherwise, if I return it, there's going to be a delay. And then sometimes when there's a delay, that particular invoice, that child's check would be submitted later as well. So that's just helpful if you use that notes section to just inform me.